Merry Christmas. First up, Merry Christmas. And may you and your family had a blessed Christmas. So over here in Singapore, we are just winding down for the day, but friends in the northern hemisphere, you are just starting out, and so Merry Christmas. And I just want to wish all of you a blessed Christmas. And if you are watching, please take this time to be able to exchange greetings and send your messages of blessing as well as congratulatory messages all around. In any case, today, it's Christmas, and it's a day that I took some time to reflect. And one of the things that I have been asking myself is the economics of live streaming. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, um, what I mean by that essentially is the following. Does it make economic sense to be doing a live stream for me every day? Now, you had to bear in mind that the fact that just because you can doesn't mean you should, right? I mean, that's something that I always tell my team. That's something that I always tell myself. That is something that I always tell my son. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. And for the most part, especially for those of us who are looking at leveraging live streaming for 2021 for our business, one of the things that you really, really must take note is the fact that um, you know whether does it make economic sense. In other words, you as a business person, you have to look at this activity and to ask yourself whether does it make sense, right? Zara, Merry Christmas to you over at LinkedIn, and Ali, hello from India. How's everything in India, right? Trust everything is good. Yeah. So today I want to share with you, the economics about live streaming, and more importantly, like I said, as a business person, you want to be able to look at every activity from a business standpoint, an economic standpoint, a strategy standpoint, right? To determine if what you should be doing is going to bring you that ROI. Now, before we get into that, there are a few things that I just want to explain, just so that we all have the same understanding and the same terminology. Now, first up, what exactly is live streaming? Well, live streaming means that you will be streaming your video live. In other words, it you will make a video, but the video is not going to be a pre-recorded video. Instead, that video it's being made and distributed on the fly. Now, bearing in mind that why would anyone want to do, a live stream instead of a pre-recorded video? Well, there could be many reasons, but for my main reason itself, one thing is that I find that live streaming is extremely difficult, especially to do it on a consistent daily basis. And live streaming is going to be mainstream, right, in 2021. And so there are two reasons why I'm doing this. One, from a capability building point of view, I want to make sure that I have the capability. I want to be able to speak authoritatively about live streaming going forward. The other thing is that I would also like to be able to use live streaming as a way to benefit my business and the clients that I'm going to be working with in 2021. And so if you have been thinking about live streaming, then leave y- type in yes in the comment below itself. So today, so live streaming is one aspect that we all have to understand. The other aspect that I would like to talk a bit about, it's from an economic standpoint. And what do we mean by economics? Well, at the end of the day, it's going to be some level of investment, whether in terms of time or money or both. And what we definitely want to see is what are the returns. Now, bearing in mind that the returns may not be entirely, absolutely monetary in terms, right? But there are certain things that we need to consider itself. So I'm going to go over the 8 factors that I have been thinking through today as I was reflecting on live streaming and whether I should continue with that on a daily basis or should I do it on a just a regular basis, but perhaps not on a daily basis. Now, so for those of you who are definitely thinking about doing live streaming, this video it's crucial for you because it helps you to be able to validate and also to determine if it's going to be worth your while in order to dive deep into live streaming. All right, so let's go and talk about the first factor. Now, the first factor that you have to think about in live streaming is investment. Sure, you could just live stream using your cell phone, and that is something that you definitely can do. In addition to that, many of our cell phones that we have these days are probably even better than a DSLR camera in terms of the ability to change the settings, the ability to change the ISO and all that. You can actually control your camera on your phone just like you would with a camera that is a standalone product. So, when it comes to investment itself, I'm talking beyond just, the camera. Now, sure, you could use your phone as the main camera for your live stream itself, but if you are thinking about this from a business point of view, which means that you are really looking at leveraging this and crushing it and to be able to build a name for yourself, then definitely there are a few things that you would want to consider. So when it comes to investment, there I would categorize it into two broad category. One category would be the hardware, and the other category would be the software. Now, when it comes to the hardware, it can add up pretty fast, right? So, for example, with a basic setup, you definitely need a camera, and that may not be the webcam or an external webcam. Like I say, you can do that. And if you are on a budget, you can certainly go ahead and do that, right? And that's how I started with. But if you're taking things to the next level, you definitely want to look at investing in a camera. So, if you got questions about which camera to use, what are the best camera out there, and what's the camera that I use, for example, leave your questions in the comments, and I'll be sure to answer that. So you definitely need a camera. The other thing that you would need, it's going to be a microphone. Right, there are tons of options out there when it comes to microphone. You have really, really cheap ones, and they do a pretty good job. You also have really, really expensive one like this, but they do an excellent job, more so than you know just an external mic itself. So you would definitely need a mic. Now, what kind of mic would you need? Would you need a really, really expensive one, or would you be able to get by with, say, a $65, microphone that you can get from Amazon? Now, t- I've tried them all, right? I've tried the really budget version, and I've also tried the premium version itself. And of course, there are pro and cons, but the main thing is that you want to be able to use it to capture external audio, and you want to do it in a way that it's professional as well as reliable. I think that's the most key thing possible. So you need the camera, you need the microphone, and you definitely need some kind of lighting, right? And over here I've got several lights here to kind of illuminate me, and in addition to that I've also got some background lights here, to kind of live, just to beautify the background itself so that it doesn't look too um, you know, boring, right? So those are some of the things that you definitely need to think about. Now, on a budget version, you can definitely get a soft light for pretty cheap, and that's absolutely something that it can be done. Now, if you have a little bit of budget, you can certainly think about something a bit more professional, like what I have here, an aperture dome, which allows me to control a lot more things than I would if I would just use a softbox. But does it work? Yes, it both works fine. And right, and I think the main thing is, of course, your content, right? So investment, it's one aspect of it. Now, so you need a camera, you need a mic, you need some kind of lighting. On top of that, if you really want to be pushing it, then definitely you want to look at a good enough machine to do the live stream. And when you talk about machine, I'm talking about computers here, right? Because in fact, when you are actually feeding, let's say, your camera, your microphone into your computer is doing quite a fair bit of heavy lifting there in order for them to convert into a signal that can be streamed out to the various platforms. And so, this is going to very quickly heat up, and it's going to be very quickly exhausted in terms of processing power and space. And so you would need a decent enough machine to be able to do all that, right? And so that is something that you would want to seriously consider. So you definitely need a computer to do your live stream. Okay, and so that it's the bare minimum in terms of hardware. Once again, the camera, the mic, the light, as well as the um, computer, right? Can you do it using just an iPad? Of course you can. Like I say, there are tons of options out there, and arguably many of the mobile devices that we have these days, it's pretty good. So, I wouldn't say you can't. Well, the whole question behind that is that, do you want to produce a show that is going to be, eye catching and to be able to impress someone, or are you just looking at producing a show and you really don't care about the quality of the video itself, right? So those are some of the things that you want to take note. So you definitely, yes, you definitely can use an iPad, but that may or may not be um, good enough, right? So that's something that you can do. Now, so that is the hardware bit. Now, when it comes to the software, there are a few things that you can take note. One is, of course, you can always live stream natively to the platform itself, and the platform these days, like Facebook and YouTube, does a pretty good job allowing you to live stream from your desktop. But if you are looking at, simulcasting your live stream to various channels like how I'm doing now, then definitely you want to consider a software to be able to help you do that. Now, what a software does is that it is just taking one signal from you and it's distributing it out to all the various platforms, right? If you're going to do it individually on your computer, you can definitely do that. But what that means is that the computer is doing two times the work. All right. So that is definitely going to be a strain if you do not have a fast enough machine. I have a really, really fast enough machine to be able to help me do that, so I don't run into issues like drop frame and you know lag, latency, and all that kind of stuff. So that it's really, really good for me. Now, so you have the hardware, you have the software, so that is the investment. Now, the other investment that you really need to consider, it's investment in time, right? Because doing a live show requires quite a fair bit of planning, and you know we are not. We not we have to prepare for the live show itself. You can't just flip up the camera and just start talking, right? I mean, yes, you can, but you're not going to sound very organized itself. So you definitely need some level of planning, whether it's going to be extensive planning or it's just going to be writing down point forms like I did, right? That really depends on your level of familiarity and how confident you are in doing a live stream. But having said that, you definitely need some time to do some level of research, to be able to do some planning, to be able to create some assets before you actually go live, right? So time is definitely a big issue. So if you were to ask me how much time would you need to invest um, when you're doing live streaming itself, I would say give and take, you at least need to give yourself about an hour and a half, 90 minutes to probably 2 hours if you're just starting out. That's the kind of time that you would need to invest into, to be able to do your live stream. Like I say, um, I cannot push myself, so I do it every day. You definitely do not have to do that every day. You can do it like 2 times a week, 3 times a week, or 1 time a week. That is really up to you. But the point I want to make here is that you have to make sure that it's consistent. So, in order to be consistent, you sure have to put in, a set amount of hours, if not on a daily basis, at least on a weekly basis, right? So that's investment. Now, so investment is a big part of it, and I would say that many people would actually get tripped over because of the investment bit. They will either say that, well, I need a better camera, I need a better mic, I need a better light, and you can spend all that fussing over that and procuring all this hardware itself. But let me tell you this: do not do that, right? Do not do that. In fact, if you want to upgrade your gear, do it one piece at a time. So if you have to pick one, which one would you pick first? I would pick the camera first, right? Because it is visual, and you want to make sure that when it comes to the capturing of the video itself, it is good. Now, if you have a DSLR already at home, you can definitely pick that up and do that. I wouldn't go into that, but that's something that you definitely can do. So do not get hung up about I need to have this light, I need to have this mic, I need to have this camera. Don't do that. Start off with whatever you have, right? That's a true hallmark of an entrepreneur. Start with whatever you had, and then upgrade your gear bit by bit, one piece at a time. And of course, never ever go into debt just to procure any of this equipment, because that's unwise. All right, that's purely unwise. Yeah, so investment is a big part. I just want to say upfront that you have to commit to it. You have to either set aside a certain amount of budget, whether budget in terms of monetary or budget in terms of time, before you can start doing this, right? So that's the first factor that you have to consider. Now, the second factor that you really want to consider is, um, I would say, from the point of view of government spending. Now, I'm speaking like a pure economist here, because when you look at any kind of investment, you definitely want to look at government spending. Why is that important? Well, it is important because the very fact that you and I are able to live stream now with ease, and to be able to do that and to have our own channel and have our own show, all this is made possible because of the infrastructure that we have in place, right? I'm absolutely excited about the possibility of 5G, and over here in Singapore, we are rolling out 5G, almost to 50% of the island. In case you didn't know, Singapore is an island, right? We're rolling this out to, about 50% of the island by early next year. And that is truly exciting because that could determine that we are able to do not just live stream, but we are possibly able to do something more than that. And even if we are just looking at live stream itself, it's going to enable us to do things that are truly exciting, which, at this point in time, it's not very clear, but it certainly means that with the kind of speed that we get, we definitely can do more things, right? So I, whenever I want to invest in something or whenever I want to make a business decision, I always want to look at, what's the government doing? Is that something that, governments would have to see to, would they be supportive of that itself? So for example, if I decide on a particular initiative, a business initiative, I want to look at what's the government's plan, because when it comes to a point when there is some level of mandatory or there's some level of support, it definitely makes the choice of businesses wanting to take out a particular solution a lot easier. So for example, here in Singapore, there is a huge possibility that the government is going to support small businesses when it comes to leveraging new technology and new media, and live stream being one of them. That is something that we are truly excited about. So then that is going to open up a lot of opportunities and also a lot more support. I mean, just imagine if all the small businesses get excited about live streaming and we are just able to, but when it comes to footing the bill, let's say if small businesses have to do it out of their own pocket, that demand and that willingness may drop tremendously. But if you have the government supporting to a certain extent, whether in terms of hardware, software, consulting, or even in terms of subscription, that would dramatically reduce the cost of small businesses wanting to get started itself. So that kind of really, really opens up a lot of opportunities, a lot of possibilities, and definitely, you know, you want to look at in your local area, is that going to be support from the government or the support from the network? Is that going to be something that it's possible? So, as an example, I do know that some of my friends in Manila, Philippines, this might not be something that they are looking at a possibility because of the fact that many of them are still watching the video on their cellular plan on their cell phone. And so that might really slow things down. And people may not want to be inclined to want to watch it on their cell phone, primarily because it's going to cost them money, right? And so that is going to be something that you will have to think about whether it's going to be whether the infrastructure is going to be there. So, as from what we see right now here in many parts of Asia, the infrastructure is definitely there, the support is there, and the way forward is just going to be exciting itself. So that's factor number two. Now, once we have considered, the investment part is something that we have the ability to allocate resources into that. We also look at, in terms of infrastructure and support, we can get some of that from the government, for example. The next part really that we will have to think about is level of efficiency. Now, what do I mean by level of efficiency? It means that, you want to be able to do it in the most efficient way possible. Now, efficiency to me comes down to something as simple as workflow. So every day when I hooked up my computer, when I start the live stream process, I have a series of steps that I do it step by step. And I always start off with the same steps and end off with those same exact step in reverse, right? And so it has becomes like, it become like a muscle memory, and it allows me to set up in a really quick time because I do not have to think like, where does this go, or where's this cable, or where's that cable. I know exactly what is the first thing I connect, what's the second thing I connect, what's the third thing I do. All that is right down to muscle memory. So I have a workflow, and I am a big believer of workflow itself, because with the right workflow, it can cut down the amount of time when you spend trying to figure things out, instead of that being something that, okay, step one, this one I'm going to do, step two, step three, step four, right? And so if you are thinking about live streaming and you want my workflow itself, how do I do that? Let me know, and I'll be more than glad to send you some materials to look at. So if that's something that you're interested in, make sure you type in workflow in the comments. So whether you're watching it live right now or you are watching the replay, go ahead and do that, because I will read every comment even after the live stream. All right. So efficiency is the workflow. So you have to develop a particular workflow for yourself. And the workflow is not just when you're doing the live streaming, but the front loading part. So, the pre-production, if you like, right? It's where you start planning, you start looking at what is being done and what needs to be done, right? And so that requires a workflow itself. Um, and so if you want to be able to consistently produce, live stream content, you definitely need a workflow. You definitely need a process to kind of help you achieve that on a consistent basis. Without that, you really, really run the risk of not being able to produce something on a consistent basis, and you're going to waste a lot of time trying to figure out what to do. And wasting time is definitely not something that you want to do, because you are already investing time into this project itself, right? So that it's efficiency. And talking about wasting time, the other part that you really want to consider, it's not just cost but opportunity cost. So opportunity cost in economics, what we really mean is that, if you're going to invest time, money, effort, and resources into doing this, right? What is the opportunity cost of doing this? That means, if you were to spend all this time doing something else, would it be able to give you a better return? Now, there are two ways to look at it. One is that you can look at it in the short term, right? Doing this might not give me the immediate reach to my customer at this point in time, right? So you may kind of look at it in the short term basis and say that, well, it's not going to get me business. I might as well focus on my lead generation. I might as well focus on my sales and marketing efforts instead of doing live streaming. So that's one way of looking at it. Now, if of course, if you are right now truly hungry and in need of customers right now, then definitely live streaming is not something that you want to consider. I mean, like I said, unless you have the resources, capability, and bandwidth to do that, this may not be the best strategy for you. So if you or your business right now, it's really a huge question mark about what's going to happen, where am I going to get my next paycheck, or when am I going to get my next contract or project that's going to come. If that's going to be your concern, then live streaming is not the thing that you want to do. What you want to do in that circumstance is that you definitely want to start making phone calls, talk to people, and to be able to get them to see you, and then to for you to make an offer in terms of what you can do for their business, right? So that is definitely one aspect of it. Now, so if you do not fall into the category, which means that you have a little bit of a slack, you have a bit of a luxury in terms of investing into marketing, investing into building up an asset of a digital asset, a library of digital asset, then yes, definitely you want to look at live streaming. So the opportunity cost for you really is that if I'm able to just put in 2 hours every day, right? Put in 2 hours every day to produce something of high enough quality, and not just to create content for the sake of creating content, but creating content to solve problems, right? If you're able to do that and you say that this is going to be an investment, because I know that when when this thing starts getting traction, right? It is not just going to give me a linear progression. It's not just going to see a linear growth. It's probably going to see geometric growth or even exponential growth, right? Because now that you have built up all this library, like for example, for me, I built up, a library of 211 live videos to date, and with all this 211, definitely I'm able to speak from it, about live streaming, from an authority perspective. And for someone who has the experience and also it's a practitioner and not just talking about it in concept, right? So efficiency, opportunity cost, these are the things that you really need to consider. Now the other thing that you will need to consider, and this is very much similar to investment, and that is the cost, right? And so this is real cost in terms of cost going out, right? It's not the investment part, but it's really the cost. So what you can look at that is, for instance, when I look at getting a piece of software, I'm looking at it as a cost and not as an investment. When I'm looking at getting a particular piece of or getting some help to help me repurpose my video, I'm looking at it as a cost, not as an investment. And so the way to think about whether it's a cost or an investment is that over time, is it going to help you build assets, or is it an expenditure that you have to incur in order to get the job done? Right. So that would make it very, very clear. So if it is something that kind of invests, allow you to invest and build an asset, then it is an investment. But if it's something just an expenditure that allows you to get things done, then it's going to be likely the cost. Now, the cost of producing a live stream is actually fairly cheap. You know, of course, that is if you are smart, and that is if you are economical when it comes to the cost itself. What I do is I limit the amount of cost to a bare minimum, right? In fact, prior to using Restream, I really had no cost at all. Um, other than the fact that I need electricity, right? But apart from that, I really have very, very little cost to think about, because every piece of equipment is actually an asset. It's not just something that I could use for myself. I could also use for my client. I could also, this is also going to help me in terms of creating a better quality digital asset. And so these are not costs to me. These are actually investment, right? And so that is factor number five. Now, factor number six is, of course, you want to ask yourself in terms of demand, right? And when it comes to demand, really, what we're talking about here is that who are the people that you want to serve? And you definitely want to ask yourself, is this a way that I am able to get to them? And if this is something that I'm providing, is it going to be able to solve that problem? Now, of course, it is something that one would presume that if you are starting a business and you are looking at providing a service, you have already validated that demand. Unfortunately, I can tell you from experience that many people, including myself, sometimes we get caught up, we fall in love with the product or the service that we're offering, that so much so that we are even prepared to ignore the fact that there is no demand. So I mean, we could go into competitive analysis here, but that is not the time and place for this. But what you definitely want to see is that the thing that you're doing, is there going to be demand? And if there's going to be demand, then obviously you want to go into this and consider leveraging live streaming. So here, really, you also want to look at the possibility of competition, because that will definitely tell you in terms of whether is there going to be demand or not, right? So that it's factor that's factor number six. Factor number seven, it's what I call marginal. Now, marginal is something that is um, a concept that sometimes um, people miss. And what I mean by that is the following, right? Now, the following is essentially, um, when you think about marginal, is that if I would have to, the next video that I'm going to do, the next live stream that I'm going to do, how much is it going to cost me? And what you want to do is that you want to bring down that marginal cost to as little as possible. And so one way to think about that is that if you have to buy, a piece of equipment, if you have to buy a software to help you do the job, you want to make sure that you have sufficient demand, you have sufficient bandwidth, you have sufficient use for that particular piece of equipment or software before you procure them, because the marginal cost of making that next video is going to help you reduce the cost tremendously. So as an example, the reason why I decided to bite the bullet and subscribe to Restream is primarily because of the fact that if I'm going to individually broadcast to all these different platforms itself, it is going to cost me more time than otherwise. I would have to configure a lot of settings. Yes, I could broadcast to both LinkedIn as well as um, YouTube and Facebook separately. But what that also means is that for each of those platforms, I have to go in and key in things separately. Right now, with this platform itself, it allows me to, essentially just do it one time and it goes out to all this platform. Later on, if there is a need, I can then go to each and every individual platform and make the changes accordingly. Right. And so that's going to save me time. And to me, it helps me with that marginal level. And because the marginal cost of me just doing or posting it to another platform is going to reduce it down to zero, right? And the last factor that you definitely want to consider is the factor called, um, you know, the factor of uh, elasticity, right? And when I think about elasticity, what I'm really thinking about is that, how price sensitive are your customers, right? So if you're thinking about live streaming and you want to know that, what is the price sensitivity of your customers. So the higher the level of sensitivity, um, then it might not make as much sense for you to be able to do live streaming, unless through live streaming itself you are able to reach a bigger crowd, right? A bigger market size, for example. Thank you, Abby. I really appreciate your comments there. You know, I mean, I really think about all these topics, and all these areas itself. And right now, what I'm doing really is to do my best to be able to communicate to everyone who wants to listen and anyone who wants to pay attention to live streaming, because I think this is going to be something that it's going to be mainstream in 2021. So elasticity, it's the following. Now, of course, there are a few ways of looking at this. There isn't always an absolute thing. So if, let's say, if I am you know providing a service, or selling a product that is going to be very, very small in terms of value. Now, in order for me to make a sizable amount of revenue or profit, I would have to sell by volume. However, if the price sensitivity of my customer, right? Whether potential or otherwise, that price sensitivity is really, really high, then live streaming may not be the best option for you unless you're able to figure a few things out. Number one is that you're able to continually use live streaming and probably also paid advertisement to help you reach even more people, right? Then that may make a lot of sense for you. But if you are selling something that is $20 and you want to do, 100 live stream, and and people who are going to buy this product of yours is going to be really, really price sensitive, um, then I would say it doesn't make sense, right? It doesn't make sense for you to consider live streaming. Now, so who's live streaming for? I believe live streaming it's for people who sell something that is at least what I call mid-range level. So, for every single product or service that you put out, if you are hitting at least 3,000 per transaction, right? 3,000 per transaction, then you can discover or you can consider live streaming as a viable option. Now, the reason is because, to produce a show, you really do not need a lot of money once you have gotten over the investment bit. And you just have to take note that in terms of the cost, you're keeping it to a minimal or a manageable amount. And if you're able to hit, let's say, $3,000 per transaction, then what that means is that it's going to give you a sizable amount of profit. Now, with a sizable amount of profit, what you want to do is that you want to be able to reinvest those profit into, generating more sales in that respect itself. And so, if that is the case, I would say live streaming is definitely the way to go. So, who is live streaming for? Well, anybody who is, for example, I would say a realtor. Um, uh, they definitely want to consider live streaming, right? If you are someone who is, let's say, a consultant and you sell a consulting package for anything, like for me, I sell a consulting package for anything from 12,000 and onwards. Um, then definitely it's worth the while for me to be able to do that. Plus, I get lots of opportunity to share stories and case studies to be able to help beef up the credibility itself, right? If you are doing training and 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 you are thinking of using live stream as a way to project yourself so that to demonstrate that you are comfortable and you are confident in front of the camera, perhaps that can be the case, and that may be something that you can consider. But I would say, you definitely want to look at what's your hourly rate, or how much are people paying you for every training session itself, right? And to add to that, if you are definitely looking at, say, for example, um, in the area of public speaking, as a speaker, as a virtual speaker, or as a speaker in general, then definitely, this might be something that is worth the while doing it. But like I say, if you're doing, really B2C and um, low value in terms of monetary value, not as in value, as in what you bring to people, but low value as in monetary value, then I would say it probably doesn't make sense unless you can sell in bulk. So, for instance, if you are selling like iPhone cases or iPod cases, that kind of stuff where per piece is going to be of it's definitely going to be less than 3,000. I mean, for crying out loud, the phone itself doesn't even cost 3,000, right? Thankfully, then live streaming may not be the one may not be the option for you, right? So these are the eight factors that I think about. Now, um, I I want to put in an additional bonus factor just to give you a perspective and to share with you. That's how I think about when doing certain things, right? Especially when it comes to live streaming itself. And the ninth factor that I looked at is that, is this thing going to be able to allow me to create one time, but allow me to benefit from it over and over and over again? So, a very simple question: can I create once and leverage this over and over and over again? And of course, the answer here is yes, I can definitely do that, right? And if that's the case, sometimes because of that answer itself, it might render, factors like costs, like investment, as not so relevant or not so important. Because if I know that, I'm putting in all this effort, time, and money and resources into building something that is going to be an asset for myself, my company, my business, that is something that is worth the while, right? So if I'm, always chasing the latest gear just to satisfy my vanity or to impress people, right? Then obviously that is not going to be a wise choice. But if I am pursuing this because I'm thinking about it in as a business person, as an entrepreneur, as an economist, as a strategist, then this is definitely worth the while, right? So, friends, this I hope will give you a better idea of trying to evaluate if you should go into live streaming or live streaming is going to make sense for you. Now, as of now, I still want to continue with this daily live stream at least until I hit the 365 mark. Then I would seriously reconsider what is my next strategy, because I believe that now, I still have 100 over more episodes to do. And I believe in the 100 over episodes, I'm going to be able to take live streaming to a next level, right? And so, I just want to see how far I can go with that. And so I'm definitely going to continue doing it on a daily basis. That's it. Once I hit the 365 mark, I would then reconsider how I want to take it going forward, right? So once again, if you got a question about live streaming, if there is something that you would like to know, um, leave it in the comment, and I'll be more than glad to answer and those questions itself. So whether it's regards to gear, or whether it's regards to what software, or how should I do it, which platform should I look at, and what are some of the things that I could do when it comes to live streaming? What do I say? How do I know how to prepare the script? How do I know what are some things that I need to look into? Then, hit me up. I will be more than happy to share, my experience with you. And also, if you have a live show, then definitely I would, seriously consider jumping on your show to address some of the questions that your audience might have in terms of live streaming itself, right? And definitely from through that collab itself, we probably could see some opening up some new markets and some new audiences for both of us, right? So if you have an audience and you want to look at leveraging live streaming, let me know. And also, as of now, I am not accepting any interviews or anyone on my show, because I just want to complete this 365 episodes as an experiment before I bring in somebody else. But if I get sufficient demand or requests, I may open up another show just to do this, as I've done with a local company earlier this year. So with the other local company, I have worked with them to produce 4 episodes as a trial to allow them to see how this can kind of really take their business to the next level, right? And so that's really something that you can consider itself. So if, like I said, if you got a question, let me know. I'll be more than happy to help you figure out live streaming as a strategy for your business. And with that, once again, Merry Christmas, everyone. And I wish everyone a blessed Christmas. And I'll speak to you on the next one. Yeah. Bye bye.